August 18, 1944, 0600 hours. Generalfeldmarschall Günther von Kluge stood in his command vehicle 12 kilometers east of Falaise, France, and studied a tactical map that showed something he hadn't seen in 2 months: an opportunity. The Allied breakout from Normandy had created a massive bulge in the German lines. American forces under Patton had swept south and east, then turned north toward Falaise. British and Canadian forces were pushing south from Caen. Between them, a gap, a corridor, an escape route. Von Kluge commanded what remained of German Army Group B. 2 full armies, the 5th Panzer Army and the 7th Army, approximately 100,000 soldiers, were positioned inside what the Allies were already calling the Falaise Pocket. The pocket was 40 kilometers long, 25 kilometers wide at its widest point, and it was closing. But von Kluge was not panicking. He was calculating. Under his command were the remnants of 9 Panzer divisions, total operational strength 600 tanks and assault guns. These were not the fresh formations that had launched Operation Lüttich 2 weeks earlier. These were survivors, battle-hardened crews in damaged but functional vehicles, Panthers, Tigers, Panzer IVs, Stug assault guns, the core of Germany's armored strength in France. Von Kluge's plan was textbook mobile warfare. Concentrate the armor, punch through the narrowing gap between American and Canadian forces near Chambois, create a corridor 8 kilometers wide, evacuate the infantry divisions first, then the support units, finally the armor as the rear guard. The entire operation, if executed with speed and discipline, would require 36 to 48 hours. The math was simple. The gap at Chambois was currently 12 kilometers wide. Allied forces were converging at approximately 3 kilometers per day. Von Kluge had 4 days, maybe 5, before the pocket closed completely. 4 days to extract 100,000 men and their equipment. It should have been possible. German staff officers had executed similar breakouts on the Eastern Front. The Wehrmacht was expert at mobile defense, at fighting retreats, at extracting forces from encirclements. Von Kluge himself had commanded successful withdrawals in Russia. But von Kluge was making a calculation based on 1943 Eastern Front logic in a 1944 Western Front reality. He was planning a breakout that required 3 things: daylight movement of massed armor, clear roads for vehicle columns, and 48 hours of continuous operations. He did not know that the Allies had prepared for exactly this moment. He did not know that 18 kilometers north of his position, at a dozen forward airfields in Normandy, 1,200 fighter-bombers were fueled, armed, and waiting. He did not know he was about to face a weapon system that would make traditional armored breakouts obsolete. At 0647 hours, von Kluge issued the order: all Panzer divisions begin movement toward Chambois corridor, maximum speed, bypass resistance, objective, establish 8-kilometer wide corridor by 1800 hours, August 18th. Within 30 minutes, 600 German armored vehicles were on the move, the largest concentration of German armor since the Mortain counterattack 2 weeks earlier. Panthers formed the spearhead, Tigers provided flank security, Panzer IVs and Stug assault guns filled the middle of the columns. Behind them, thousands of trucks, half-tracks, and support vehicles. The columns stretched for kilometers. Tank tracks churned the Norman roads into rivers of mud. Exhaust from 600 diesel engines created a haze that hung over the countryside. The sound was immense, a continuous roar of engines and clattering tracks that could be heard 10 kilometers away. Von Kluge watched the first elements depart from his observation post. The professionalism was evident. Tank commanders maintained proper spacing. Radio discipline was good. Units advanced in coordinated echelons, exactly as doctrine prescribed. For the first 90 minutes, the breakout proceeded without incident. Lead elements of 2nd Panzer Division advanced 7 kilometers towards Chambois Corridor. 1st SS Panzer Division, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, pushed northeast, securing the left flank. 112th SS Panzer Division, Hitler Jugend, protected the right flank. 116th Panzer Division followed as the reserve. American and Canadian ground forces were caught off guard. The concentration of German armor was unexpected. Forward Allied units fell back, calling for support, requesting reinforcements. Von Kluge received the reports at 0823 hours. Lead elements encountering light resistance, advance proceeding on schedule. Estimated time to secure Chambois Corridor, 6 hours. He allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. The breakout might succeed. His armies might escape. Then, at 0836 hours, the sky above Falaise changed. The first formation appeared from the north. Not a squadron, not a group, a wing. 72 aircraft in tight formation, flying at 3,000 meters altitude. Republic P-47 Thunderbolts, American fighter bombers from 9th Tactical Air Command. Von Kluge's operations officer spotted them first. He grabbed binoculars, counted aircraft, felt his stomach drop. Herr Generalfeldmarschall, aircraft, many aircraft, American fighters. Von Kluge stepped outside the command vehicle and looked north. It was concentrated air power on a scale he had never personally witnessed. At 0838 hours, a second formation appeared from the west, another 72 P-47s. Then a third formation from the northwest, 96 more aircraft. Von Kluge's staff counted 240 aircraft visible simultaneously, and more were coming. What von Kluge couldn't know from his position on the ground was that he was witnessing the culmination of a systematic air operation planned 72 hours earlier. On August 15th, Allied intelligence had decrypted German communications, indicating preparation for a mass breakout. Ultra intercepts revealed von Kluge's intentions, his timing, his routes. Allied air commanders had 3 days to prepare. Major General Elwood Pete Quezada, commanding 9th Tactical Air Command, coordinated with Air Marshal Arthur Coningham of RAF 2nd Tactical Air Force. They devised a system called armed reconnaissance in depth. Not random patrols, coordinated strikes by hundreds of aircraft operating in a kill box 40 kilometers long and 25 kilometers wide. The system required 3 components. First, complete air superiority. Luftwaffe fighters had to be suppressed. Allied fighters swept German airfields on August 17th, destroying 47 aircraft on the ground. Luftwaffe combat air patrols were non-existent by August 18th. Second, forward airfields. 9th TAC operated 9 airfields within 35 kilometers of Falaise. Flight time from runway to target, 8 minutes. Each P-47 could fly 4 to 5 sorties per day. Third, ground controllers. American tank units advancing towards Chambois carried radio operators who could communicate directly with orbiting aircraft. Target acquisition to strike, 12 minutes average. At 0840 hours, the first P-47 formation dove toward the German columns. Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. Empty weight 4,900 kilograms. Maximum takeoff weight 7,900 kilograms. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 radial engine, producing 2,000 horsepower. Maximum speed 690 kilometers per hour at altitude. Armament 8 50-caliber M2 Browning machine guns with 3,400 rounds total ammunition. Ordnance capacity, 2 500-pound bombs, were 6 5-inch HVAR rockets plus 2 500-pound bombs. On August 18th, most P-47s over Falaise carried 6 HVAR rockets and 2 500-pound bombs. The high-velocity aircraft rocket had a 4.5-inch diameter, weighed 64 kilograms, carried a 21-kilogram high-explosive warhead. Velocity at impact, 420 meters per second. Penetration capability, 75 millimeters of armor at 30-degree angle. German Panther tanks had 80 millimeter frontal armor, 45 millimeter side armor, 40 millimeter rear armor. HVAR rockets could not reliably penetrate Panther frontal armor, but side and rear armor were vulnerable, and the blast effects were devastating regardless of penetration. The 1st P-47 Squadron, 36 aircraft from the 406th Fighter Group, attacked 2nd Panzer Division's lead elements at 0842 hours. The attack was systematic. The squadron divided into 3 flights of 12 aircraft each. First flight dove from 3,000 meters to 600 meters, fired all 72 rockets in a single pass at the densest part of the tank column, pulled up and circled. Second flight dove, dropped 24 500-pound bombs on the same area, pulled up. Third flight dove, strafed with .50 caliber machine guns, 2,800 rounds fired in 45 seconds. Total attack duration, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. German crews saw the P-47s diving and scattered. Tank commanders shouted orders, drivers reversed, sought cover. Machine gunners fired upwards uselessly. The .50 caliber rounds were ineffective against aircraft diving at 600 kilometers per hour. Then the rockets hit. A Panther tank took a direct hit to the engine deck. The rocket penetrated the thin top armor. The engine exploded. The crew bailed out, uniforms on fire. A Panzer IV took 2 rockets to the tracks. Both tracks severed. The tank was immobilized, blocking the road. A Stug assault gun took a 500-pound bomb near miss. The blast flipped the 24-ton vehicle onto its side. The crew inside was killed by concussion. But the greater damage was to soft-skinned vehicles. Trucks carrying fuel and ammunition were catastrophically vulnerable. A single .50 caliber round could ignite a fuel truck. A single rocket could detonate an ammunition carrier. In 3 minutes and 20 seconds, the 406th Fighter Group destroyed or damaged 11 tanks, 23 trucks, 7 half-tracks, and 4 fuel tankers. But the tactical impact was far greater than the casualty count. The lead elements of 2nd Panzer Division stopped moving. The road was blocked by burning vehicles. Crews abandoned their tanks, seeking cover in roadside ditches. The advance halted completely. At 0847 hours, von Kluge received the first report. 2nd Panzer under air attack, heavy casualties, forward movement stopped. He checked the sky. The 1st P-47 Squadron was climbing away, heading back to base. The attack was over. But 8 minutes later, at 0855 hours, a 2nd squadron appeared from the west. 36 more P-47s from the 362nd Fighter Group. They attacked 1st SS Panzer Division on the left flank. Then, at 0903 hours, a 3rd squadron hit 12th SS Panzer Division on the right flank. Von Kluge understood in that moment. This wasn't harassment. This was a system. The Allies were not randomly bombing. They were systematically destroying his armor, 1 column at a time, with fresh squadrons arriving every 10 to 15 minutes. He did the math. If a squadron attacked every 10 minutes, that meant 6 squadron attacks per hour, 72 squadron attacks in a 12-hour day.
If each squadron damaged or destroyed 20 vehicles, the total daily losses would be catastrophic. 600 tanks, 72 attacks, average 20 vehicles per attack. Total potential losses, 1,440 vehicles. His entire armored force could be destroyed twice over. The realization was immediate and total. The breakout was not going to succeed, not against this level of air power, not in daylight, not with 600 tanks concentrated on narrow roads in open country. At 0812 hours, von Kluge issued a revised order. All units disperse off-road, seek cover in hedgerows and forests, suspend movement until further orders. But dispersing 600 tanks under air attack was chaos. Tank commanders didn't know where to go. Vehicles collided trying to reverse, columns jammed at intersections, and the P-47s kept coming. Between 0840 and 1200, a span of 3 hours and 20 minutes, 9th Tactical Air Command flew 412 P-47 sorties. 412 sorties, 2,472 rockets fired, 824 500-pound bombs dropped, over 1.4 million rounds of .50 caliber ammunition expended. The sky over Falaise became a killing ground unlike anything the Wehrmacht had ever experienced. Not even the Eastern Front, with its massive Soviet air operations, had prepared German tankers for this level of systematic destruction. And the Americans were just getting started.
At 12:05 hours, just as von Kluge's dispersed tank formations were seeking cover in the Norman hedgerows, a new formation appeared from the northwest. These were not P-47 Thunderbolts. These aircraft were sleeker, more angular. Hawker Typhoons from RAF 2nd Tactical Air Force. 144 aircraft in 4 wings, flying in perfect formation at 2,800 meters altitude. Von Kluge's operations officer recognized them immediately. RAF fighters, Typhoons, very many. The Hawker Typhoon was Britain's dedicated ground attack aircraft, and it carried a weapon the P-47s did not, the RP-3 rocket. 3-inch diameter, 60-pound warhead, 25 pounds of high explosive, more powerful than the American HFAR, more devastating against armor. Each Typhoon carried 8 RP-3 rockets, plus 4 20mm cannons with 800 rounds total ammunition. The 144 Typhoons overhead represented 1,152 rockets, enough to engage every one of von Kluge's 600 tanks individually with rockets to spare. At 12:08 hours, the RAF attack began. Unlike the American squadrons, which attacked in sequence, the RAF operated a system called cab rank. Aircraft orbited the battlefield in stacks at different altitudes, waiting for ground controllers to call them in. When a target was identified, the lowest aircraft in the stack peeled off, attacked, and returned to base. The stack rotated continuously. The system was elegant and efficient, no wasted sorties, no aircraft searching randomly for targets. Every attack was directed at confirmed German positions by forward air controllers who could see the tanks with their own eyes. Squadron Leader J.R. Baldwin, commanding 245 Squadron RAF, received his target assignment at 12:11 hours from a Canadian tank commander positioned on Hill 262 north of Chambois. The Canadian could see German armor concentrated in a shallow valley 2 kilometers to his southeast. He counted 37 vehicles, mixture of Panthers and Panzer IVs, trying to hide under tree cover. Baldwin's flight of 12 Typhoons dove from 2,800 meters to 600 meters, fired 96 rockets in 2 passes, climbed away. Attack duration 4 minutes. German crews heard the Typhoons diving before they saw them. The Napier Sabre engine produced a distinctive high-pitched scream during a dive. Tank commanders called it the Yabo scream. By August 1944, that sound induced panic in even veteran crews. The rockets hit with devastating effect. A Panther took a direct hit to the turret. The rocket penetrated the 100mm armor. The ammunition inside detonated. The turret was blown 15 meters from the hull. 2 Panzer IVs took hits to their engine decks. Both engines exploded. Both crews bailed out. But again, the greatest damage was psychological and operational. The 37 German tanks weren't destroyed. Most survived with minor damage or none at all. But they stopped moving. Crews buttoned up, closed hatches, waited for the attack to end. And while they waited, they were immobile targets. At 12:19 hours, a second RAF squadron attacked the same position. Then at 12:27 hours, a third squadron. The attacks continued every 8 to 10 minutes for the next 2 hours. Von Kluge's armored force was being processed by a machine, not destroyed in a single massive strike. Destroyed piece by piece, methodically, with fresh squadrons arriving faster than German crews could recover and reposition. Between 12:05 and 1500 hours, RAF's 2nd Tactical Air Force flew 387 Typhoon sorties over Falaise. Combined with the American P-47 sorties from the morning, total Allied air sorties in the first 9 hours of August 18th reached 799 sorties. 799 individual aircraft attacks against 600 German tanks. The ratio was 1.3 sorties per tank. Every German tank commander knew that at some point during the day, an Allied fighter-bomber was specifically targeting his vehicle. The mathematics were overwhelming, but the system behind the mathematics was even more devastating. What destroyed von Kluge's breakout wasn't just the number of aircraft, it was the infrastructure that sustained those aircraft. INEX Tactical Air Command and RAF 2nd Tactical Air Force operated 27 forward airfields in Normandy by August 18, 1944. These weren't major air bases with concrete runways and permanent facilities. These were temporary strips bulldozed into Norman farmland, covered with pierced steel planking or compacted earth. But each airfield had fuel trucks, ammunition dumps, maintenance crews, and command centers with direct radio links to ground controllers. A P-47 could land, refuel, rearm, and launch again in 38 minutes. A Typhoon could do it in 43 minutes. The average distance from forward airfield to the Falaise battlefield was 32 kilometers. Flight time at cruise speed, 7 minutes. This meant that from the moment a ground controller requested air support to the moment rockets hit the target, the elapsed time was approximately 14 minutes. German forces had no equivalent system. Luftwaffe units in France operated from permanent air bases 220 to 250 kilometers east of Falaise, beyond the range of Allied fighter sweeps. Response time to ground support requests, when Luftwaffe fighters were available at all, exceeded 90 minutes.
On August 18, 1944, the Luftwaffe flew 14 sorties over Normandy. Total, for the entire day, against 799 Allied sorties. The ratio was 57-1 in favor of the Allies. But even these numbers understated the true disparity. The 14 Luftwaffe sorties accomplished nothing. Most were intercepted by Allied fighters before reaching the battlefield. 2 were shot down. The remainder dropped their bombs randomly and fled. The Allied aircraft operated with complete freedom. No German fighters contested them. Ground-based anti-aircraft fire was suppressed within hours. German flak batteries were priority targets for Allied artillery. A flak position that revealed itself by firing was destroyed by counter-battery fire within minutes. At 15:23 hours, von Kluge convened an emergency conference with his corps commanders at a farmhouse 8 kilometers east of Trun. The commanders arrived in staff cars, driving cross-country to avoid roads where Allied aircraft hunted anything that moved. General Heinrich Eberbach, commanding 5th Panzer Army, arrived first. His uniform was covered in dust. His face was gray with exhaustion. He had spent the morning coordinating tank movements under constant air attack. His first words were, "The breakout is impossible." General Paul Hauser, commanding 7th Army, arrived 10 minutes later. He had been wounded by strafing P-47s during his drive to the conference. Shrapnel wounds to his face and left arm. He refused medical treatment until after the meeting. Von Kluge opened the conference with a direct question: "Can we reach Chambois?" The silence lasted 7 seconds. Eberbach answered, "No, Herr Generalfeldmarschall, not in daylight, not with current air activity. We have lost operational mobility. Tanks that attempt to move are destroyed within 20 minutes. Those that remain stationary survive, but accomplish nothing. We are not conducting a breakout. We are waiting to be destroyed." Von Kluge turned to Hauser. "Your assessment?" Hauser's response was equally blunt. "My infantry divisions are combat effective, but without armor support and without the ability to move vehicles in daylight, they cannot break through Allied positions. The enemy is using aircraft as mobile artillery. Every crossroads, every bridge, every choke point is under observation. We are fighting an opponent who can see everything and strike anywhere within minutes." Von Kluge studied the map on the farmhouse table. The Chambois Gap was now 8 kilometers wide, down from 12 kilometers that morning. Allied forces were converging. The pocket was closing. He made a calculation. The gap was shrinking at 2 kilometers per day. At that rate, the pocket would close completely in 4 days. But his armor was being destroyed at a rate of 60 to 80 vehicles per day. In 4 days, he would have no armor left to conduct the breakout. The mathematics were brutal and inescapable. The breakout had to happen immediately, in the next 24 to 48 hours, or not at all. But conducting a breakout required moving 600 tanks in daylight under the observation of 1,200 Allied aircraft. Von Kluge spoke quietly. "Gentlemen, we are facing a form of warfare for which our doctrine has no answer. The enemy has achieved a level of air superiority that makes traditional mobile operations impossible. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an industrial system that can deploy aircraft faster than we can move tanks." He paused, then continued, "I am issuing the following orders. All armored units will disperse into company-sized elements. Movement will be restricted to nighttime only. Daylight hours will be used for camouflage and concealment. The breakout will be conducted in phases over 72 hours, beginning tonight at 2100 hours. Eberbach interrupted. "Herr Generalfeldmarschall, night movement will be slow. We may only cover 10 to 8 kilometers per night. The gap may close before we can extract all units." "I know," von Kluge replied, "but the alternative is to attempt daylight movement and lose everything in 48 hours. At least this way, some forces may escape. The conference ended at 16:07 hours. The revised plan was transmitted to all units by 1700 hours. Night breakout, dispersed formations, maximum stealth. But the plan was already obsolete. At 17:12 hours, as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, von Kluge received a report from 116th Panzer Division. Allied aircraft had destroyed the division's fuel depot. 340,000 liters of diesel fuel, the fuel reserve for the entire night movement, was burning in a massive pyre visible for 20 kilometers. A P-47 from the 368th Fighter Group had spotted the fuel dump during an afternoon patrol. The pilot radioed coordinates. Within 12 minutes, 18 P-47s attacked with incendiary bombs. The fuel dump ceased to exist. 116th Panzer Division had 94 operational tanks. With the fuel dump destroyed, those tanks had enough fuel for approximately 15 kilometers of movement, not enough to reach Chambois, not enough to escape the pocket. At 15:87 hours, 2nd Panzer Division reported similar losses. Their ammunition depot, containing 800 tons of tank ammunition, artillery shells, and small arms rounds, had been hit by RAF Typhoons. The depot exploded with such force that the blast was felt 5 kilometers away. Von Kluge sat in his command vehicle as the reports arrived. Fuel depots destroyed, ammunition depots destroyed, bridge at Chambois damaged by bombing, road junction at Trun cratered and impassable. The Americans and British weren't just attacking his tanks, they were systematically destroying the infrastructure that sustained those tanks. Fuel, ammunition, bridges, roads, everything required for mobile warfare. By 1900 hours, as the sun set and darkness finally provided cover from air attack, von Kluge understood the full scope of the disaster. His armored force had started the day with 600 operational tanks. Current operational strength, based on evening reports, 387 tanks still mobile. 213 tanks destroyed, damaged, or abandoned in 13 hours. Loss rate, 35% in a single day. But the 387 surviving tanks were scattered across 300 square kilometers, dispersed into small groups, hiding in forests and villages. Fuel stocks were critically low. Ammunition was rationed. The coordinated armored force that had begun the day as a potent weapon was now a collection of isolated, immobile strongpoints. And tomorrow, the Allied aircraft would return. By dawn, there would be no maneuver left to attempt, only surrender or destruction. The pocket did not close with a single decisive blow, but with thousands of small, calculated strikes, each one severing another artery of movement, another chance of escape. What remained of the German armored force was no longer an instrument of war, but wreckage waiting for daylight. This was not a defeat caused by poor tactics or failed courage. It was the collision of an army built for movement with an enemy that controlled the sky, the fuel, the roads, and the time itself. Steel and doctrine met production lines and airfields, and the outcome had been decided long before the first tank was lost. In Normandy, the German army did not simply lose a battle, it lost the ability to fight modern war.